There we go. Oh, we're good. We are live. Sorry about that, everybody. Welcome to Status Coup News. It's the Wednesday edition. It's me, your host, Kim Brown. Today is Wednesday, September 21st. And naturally, I have to look at my phone to know what the calendar date is because since the pandemic, time has lost all sense and meaning. Time has no boundary. It has no beginning, no end. I barely know what day it is. I'm very aware that it is 5 o'clock. And so it means it is time for your good news roundup here on Status Coup. Come on in, everybody. Make yourself comfortable. Get seated, please. We are still masking indoors here because contrary to the US president and I guess our wayward CDC, the pandemic is still very much pandemicking. So I would appreciate it if you kept your mask on whilst indoors because we want to be cognizant and respectful to our immunocompromised, our chronically ill people, and our disabled folks who are still very susceptible to contracting COVID and becoming deathly ill. So we got good-minded people in here, so I'm sure you all are well aware and taking those same considerations and precautions in your everyday life. So come on in, everybody. We've got a great show in store for you today. So we will be talking about the devastation that Puerto Ricans continue to experience in the wake of this latest hurricane. Fiona entered the island as a Category 2 storm, dropped nearly 2 feet of water, and the island has been inundated with floods. But most importantly, Puerto Ricans, for a very long time now, have been demanding major upgrades to their infrastructure, to their bridges, and particularly that power grid. And we're going to talk about the changing hands of the privatization of the Puerto Rican power grid, that there have been literally hundreds of millions of dollars poured into this, and yet the grid continues to fail. And I can assure you, it's not because of incompetence, it's because of intentionality. We'll get into that in just a little bit. Also, the House Democrats are scrambling to put together all the votes to authorize a new police funding bill. Yes, I know, gang, I know. Hold your comments, hold your applause. Let's get this perfectly clear. Democrats love police as much or greater than the GOP. And they intend to make sure that the police are funded to the hilt. Jackson water crisis, what's that? Flint water crisis, huh? Puerto Rico's underwater? The police. We have to make sure the police have everything they need. We'll get into that. But first things first, we're going to start off with y'all boy. I can only call him y'all's boy. He's absolutely not my damn boy. Joseph Robinette Biden. That jankro of an American president. Well, he addressed the United Nations General Assembly today, and on the topic, most on the tip of his tongue, had everything to do with Ukraine and criticizing Russian President Vladimir Putin. So the American news cycle has picked up, allegedly, that Russia is trying to do a, quote, partial mobilization, right, of its troops, whatever the fuck that means. 300,000 reservists. I don't even know what the reports I've read indicate that Russia doesn't per se have a reserve army, but they're trying to call up old veterans, I suppose, give them a quick little 2-week training and drop them off in Ukraine to get the fighting. But the first thing I want us to just be clear about, number one, we have to be extremely skeptical and dubious of any news about Russia that comes out of the American news cycle. Because why? Because the American media apparatus that definitely works as an extension of the U.S. State Department won't hesitate to dispense massive amounts of propaganda. And I know Americans think that we are not propagandized. No. That's the Chinese and the Russians. No. Our media tells us the truth. How could we be propagandized? The American government doesn't lie to its people. Hopefully we all growner than that, right? So the word is that Putin has made nuclear threats to Europe. Okay. Does that make any sense to y'all? Does that make any goddamn sense to you? And everyone wants to frame Putin as perhaps being crazy. Well, I don't. He's rich, okay? Why would Vladimir Putin want to blow up the world when it's such a comfortable place for him? Let's be fucking for real here. But let's listen to y'all boy, Joseph Robinette Biden. stand up in front of the United Nations General Assembly. Time out. Where is the ghost of Hugo Chavez when we need him? Do you guys remember that time Hugo Chavez spoke after George W. Bush at the UNGA, and he talked about how it smelled like sulfur because the devil had been here the day before? Where is our 2022 Hugo? Where is he or she? Would love to hear from them. But in the meantime, let's hear from Joseph Biden. Finger wag, beat his chest about all the support that America has given to Ukraine. And when he drops that dollar amount, everybody, I want you to pay special close attention to it and put it in the context of all the news that you have seen covered on this channel regarding water contamination, infrastructure failures, and a myriad of things happening right here in Los Estados Unidos. But Joe Biden has to prop up Ukraine. Let's take a look.
141 nations in the General Assembly came together and to unequivocally condemn Russia's war against Ukraine. The United States has marshaled massive levels of security assistance and humanitarian aid and direct economic support for Ukraine. More than $25 billion to date. Our allies and partners around the world have stepped up as well. And today, more than 40 countries represented in here have contributed billions of their own money and equipment to help.
Now, gang, a normal person would be embarrassed. A regular person, a human, actually might find a smidge of embarrassment in boldly proclaiming to the world that America has given, not loaned, not loaned, given $25 billion to Ukraine. And we have water systems failing all across this country, right? We have people in the mountains and down in the southwest of our country suffering from the worst drought in centuries. California's on fire, experiencing unseasonable heat waves. And I know he can't do anything about that, but you know what he can do something about? That Jackson water crisis, the latest one that will cost $2 billion to fix. And yet there's money right there for Ukraine, $25 billion. How long has this Ukrainian war been fought? 6, 7, 8 months, somewhere in there. Wow. Isn't that amazing? The ways in which America can come up with the money to support the priorities for which it truly believes in. And that is war. And that is war. That is America's greatest export to the globe. And it is war, right? So included in that 25 billion, we already know that an overwhelming majority of that was weaponry, javelins, whatever the fuck else they need to kill people. That is a huge chunk of it. But don't forget, there were cash payments in there to Ukrainians. Joe Biden boasted about making sure that Ukraine citizens had their pensions paid. Pensions to other people in Europe. The audacity of hoes. I am furious. I'm smiling out of rage. and I said I wasn't gonna make this joke on the air, but I might make this goddamn joke, and I'm gonna put it out there because y'all know I'm kidding. Let me preface it with a joke. But please, can someone please send John Hinckley Jr. Joe Biden's location, right? Because John Hinckley Jr. is out of jail. And those who know what John Hinckley Jr. was in jail for, somebody sent him Joe Biden's location. I am joking. I don't even know John Hinckley Jr., but that is besides the point. But something must be done. Steps must be taken. $25 billion to Ukraine. And Puerto Rico is underwater. I think I saw that there had been some service restored to the island, but we're still talking about over 1 million people on the island without access to power, internet. And a big chunk of those folks also do not have access to safe drinking water. Okay. And it's so funny to me that we're seeing these water crises happen simultaneously, right? All at the same time. And it's just, it must be ironic. It must be the luck of the draw that most of these communities affected with this poor quality of water or crumbling infrastructure around the water, and in Puerto Rico's case, the power, these places are mostly non-white. You think that's an accident? You think that's a mistake? You think that it's just the luck of the draw that Joe Biden found $25 billion to send to Ukraine and Jackson can't get $2 billion to get its water treatment facility upgraded, to get their pipes replaced? This is intentional. And this is this sort of, I mean, it's not subtle to me, but sometimes it can appear subtle to others. But this is the kind of racism that Democrats are just outstanding at, right? Because they will look across the globe and see, don't let no Europeans be in trouble. don't let the Serbians and the Bosnians be in trouble. Don't let Ukraine be in trouble, because we will find a way. We will find a way. Or don't let one of these brown or black countries try to get, quote unquote, too big for their britches and try to develop their own energy systems, like Iran trying to develop, I believe, nuclear power. But I don't even give a damn if they're trying to build a nuclear weapon, because guess who else has a nuclear weapon in the Middle East, huh? And they ain't supposed to have one, huh? Y'all know their name. I'm not going to even say it, but you understand what I'm saying, right? So the $2 billion for Jackson is there, but it is intentionally not being given. And why is it not being given? Because America is a place that does not care if non-white people do not survive. If non-white people do not have access to basic things like healthcare, which I know everybody does not have access to healthcare, but you all know that those health disparities and access to healthcare are far worse for Black and Indigenous folks and Latinx folks as well. So this is the sort of bullshit racism that the Democrats be on. And this is where they and the GOP are very much in unison. These are both pro-military parties, pro-police parties. They are not pro-people parties. They are not pro-human life. They are not pro making sure that everyone that lives here has access to the things that they need to survive. No, they would rather make sure that Raytheon, BAE, Boeing, they have to make sure that those CEOs and those executives have to find a way to survive off 7- and 8-figure salaries and bonuses for all of the weaponry that they have been able to sell the United States, which has in turn given to the Ukrainians, right? I do not like it here. I do not like it here. Oh, and I'm just very curious, I'm just curious, at one point, is the American public going to have a collective aha moment, a collective light bulb go off when they finally figure out who Zelensky is, what he represents, and the ideologies behind many of the military adventures in Ukraine? The mainstream American press does not want to mention that these folks are Nazis. and I don't understand. That seems very germane to the conversation. But it fucks up the narrative, right? Putin is the big enemy. It is more important to defeat Putin at all cost. If we have to prop up the Nazis to the tune of $25 billion in the course of 8 months, so be it. If Black people in Mississippi and Puerto Ricans and Black folks in New York at the Joseph Reed's homes, if them people have to die and get sick because the infrastructure is piss poor and has intentionally not been maintained, hey, got to be Putin, man, by any means necessary, right? And here's the thing, but the gag is, because America refuses to take care of its own, because America cannot provide the very bare minimum for its residents, bitch, Russia won. Russia has won. Game over. Russia won. That's it. That's the tweet. That's the post. You can post that right there. If America can't provide clean drinking water to every single person that lives here, Russia has won. Way to go. Way to go, Joe. Jim Crow Joe, way to go. I'm sorry. And it's not funny, but I laugh to keep from crying. All right, guys, do me a favor. Give us a thumbs up on the video. Tell the YouTube algorithm that, you guys got some things going on in terms of liking a Status Coup. And it is so imperative to continue to support media outlets like Status Coup, because who the fuck else is going to get up here and say it? Who else is going to get up here and say it? I had the misfortune of watching a CNN clip this morning, and I was very disappointed. Although I should not be disappointed. I've not watched CNN in a number of years, but CNN has not improved their product at all, which is why Status Coup News is so vital for you to get a very clear-minded perspective that is unencumbered by American corporate interests. So please subscribe to the channel, become a member of Status Coup, so you can continue to get this good content, and subscribe and become a member to my shit too. Burn It Down with Kim Brown. And you can check me out also on Black Power Media, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday mornings, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. for the Remix Morning Show. All very worthy channels of your subscription and your membership and of your patronage. Thank you so much in advance. All right, gang. So, we were talking about, America's greatest export, which is, of course, war. Ooh, we do war so good. We do a very bad job of maintaining this country, but we do war amazing, baby. And and the ways in which American militarization presents itself globally, the microcosm of that is evident right here on the streets of America. This story story from CNN. And it reads about House Democrats. In anticipation of the midterm election, the House Democrats are trying very, very hard to potentially get a police funding bill passed. Whoo, child. Whoo, child. I hate this. CNN also has a terrible website. It keeps doing higgy things, but you know what? It's fine. So the headline reads, House Dems struggle to overcome party divisions over police funding. Over police. Well, and in this case, it has to do with funding. And I want to read you guys a quote from a Democrat in the House who was really upset about all the defund the police talk coming from potential members of their party, although I would like for them to name names, but here we go. Quote, frankly, anti-law enforcement rhetoric is not helpful, says Representative Angie Craig of Minnesota. Minnesota? What part of Minnesota is she from? Can't be from Minneapolis. You can't be from the Twin Cities talking that yang. Angie Craig of Minnesota, who is a frontline Democrat in a tough re-election race, told CNN, quote, I've been openly critical of any member of Congress, including those of my own party, who would stop a bill to fund police departments at a moment in time where we need to really be focused on public safety in all of our communities. Representative Craig, can you please point me to the statistics where police keep us safe? I'll wait. The piece goes on. For months, a group of House centrists, what is that? A group of House centrists scarred by a tougher than expected 2020 election cycle when the GOP's attacks on Democrats around, quote, defunding the police succeeded in some key races, have been pressing for a floor action on the package of bills designed to boost police funding. Now, I'm very curious. I kind of thought this was a foregone conclusion, because this is what reaching across the aisle is, right? These are the things that are of bipartisan agreement, that is funding the police to the teeth, but they're claiming this as an intra-party struggle, which I sort of do not believe here. But then the effort has been hampered by long-running divisions between the moderate and progressive wings of the party, with lawmakers still hung up over language to ensure accountability for police officers. Despite months of talks, House Democrats, who are working with a razor-thin majority, have yet to reach a deal over the issue. In a sign of how tricky the issue has become, they have had to drop at least one police funding measure sponsored by Representative Abigail Spanberger, former CIA, of course. I'm sure Abigail Spanberger got to be a very successful op. She managed to get from the CIA into Congress. So yeah, she's doing very well. Who is a vulnerable House Democrat from Virginia, from the negotiations, citing a lack of a path forward. By the way, Abigail Spanberger's race in Northern Virginia, if it is razor thin, then that is a reflection on her, because her opponent, respectfully, is a fucking nut. Okay, she is out there. She has been on the record. I think her name is Yeslia Vega, and she's a Republican. And she has said, first of all, she's very pro-life rather, and she said that she did not believe that a woman could be raped, right? That she did not believe that a woman could become pregnant from a rape, and if that a woman dies whilst giving birth or whilst pregnant, then that was God's decision. And if Abigail Spanberg is not doing well against her, baby, that is an indictment on Lady Abigail. Let me read this quote here from the CNN piece. So, quote, "I don't see any reason why that should be hard," says Representative Tom Manowski, who is a New Jersey Democrat whose seat is targeted by Republicans. Quote, "We have a political party in America led by people who want to defund the police. It's not the Democrats. We have a chance to demonstrate that by passing these bills." Well, who wants to defund the police? Not the GOP. I don't believe that at all. But it's interesting that this is playing out like this. So in anticipation of the midterm elections, it's very strange that the police funding is a central issue compared to everything else that's going on, right? The inflation crisis that we are experiencing, we're still dealing with the pandemic, and then quite obviously the issue of abortion. And the issue of police funding is a very important one to me, but the problem is I don't look to anybody in the Democratic Party that is going to truly address this with any seriousness or any zeal. The third most powerful Democrat, James Clyburn, who's the majority whip in the House. Clyburn called "defund the police" a catchy slogan. Like Jim Clyburn, a black man from South Carolina, sees nothing wrong with making sure the police are funded. And that is a big fucking problem for me, because it tells me that either you ignorantly do not understand the issue of disproportionately funding police to the detriment of literally everything else in society, like public health care, like public education, like the arts, like parks and recs. These are things that you may not think are important, but take away the parks where you are. Or if you live in a place that does not have parks, you see how drastically different the quality of life can be for folks who lack green spaces. But again, this is the woo-woo stuff that they claim the progressives, worry too much about. That's not important. Bullshit. Yes, it is. And the thing is, you can fund all of these things if you cut them damn police budgets. And when we examine truly the function that police serve in our society, they are there to keep the poor in place, definitely to keep the blacks in place. You know what I'm saying? I mean, sorry, let me reverse that order. To keep the blacks in place first, then the poors, and then to make sure that rich people feel safe and that their property is always protected at all times, and to cover for them when they commit more egregious crimes than the societal determined, sometimes survival behaviors that are criminalized, right? Because those who are rich and powerful oftentimes do far more harm to society, to the environment, to individuals, than those who are doing something, say, like shoplifting, which, was a major crime surge over the summer because law enforcement had to crack down on all those shoplifters. Meanwhile, the power grid in Puerto Rico was set to fail. Meanwhile, arsenic was in the pipes at the Joseph Reed's homes in the East Village. Meanwhile, Flint still doesn't have access to clean water everywhere. Meanwhile, the water treatment facility was getting ready to fall the fuck down in Jackson, just, if it rained too hard. So, but it's so important that Democrats make sure that everyone is on board to get this police funding bill in action. This is the problem, everybody. When we look at the desire, I mean, they're almost slobbering at this point. And this is the Democrats, right? And the GOP, make no mistake about it, is of the exact same mind when it comes to funding the police and when it comes to sending all this money to Ukraine. Now, I know we've had some Republicans kind of be a little lukewarm. They're kind of hemmed and hawed. I don't know about Ukraine. But at the end of the day, they know that it serves American interests to make sure that the Department of Defense, that the Pentagon, is spending billions and billions of dollars because they are beholden to the lobbyists of the defense industry lobby, right? We all know this. The people do not dictate to members of Congress what the agenda is. The lobbyists do. The money does. And the money said, we got to go let the chopper sing in Ukraine. We have to go over there and support this white on white violence and support the Nazis. I'm sorry, in this white on white violence. That is the Biden priority. That is the Biden priority. And Joe Biden is responsible for that, in part, for the re-hyper militarization of the American police force. The 1994 crime bill, I even don't think it gets its proper reverence for how evil and how targeted it was towards the Black community. And I've said this on other programs before, and I'm going to say it right here. I take what the crime bill did very personally. The crime bill was passed into law in 1994. I was a teenager. I was in high school. The effects of those laws, those mandatory minimums, of the police stopping and searching us, putting possession charges on people for stems and seeds, that was Joe Biden's doing. Joe Biden fucked up the dating pool for me and my whole generation, particularly Black women, because you done locked up all the Black men. 30, 40, 50% of the Black men, 60% of the Black men now have criminal charges for stupid shit, drugs, right? Shit that should not even be illegal in the first place, because the war on drugs had been an abject failure. But what they did manage to do was to ruin millions of people's lives in pursuit of this unattainable goal of defeating the war on drugs. So these things are extremely linked. The willingness to fund the police to the hilt, to the exclusion of everything else, and the hypermilitarization that we're seeing happening in Ukraine. And be clear, these are Democrat priorities, right? You can't, nobody can point the finger at, oh, look at Trump. Trump's trying to fund the police, right? Nope, this ain't Trump. Oh, look, Trump's trying to go over there and start a new war. No, this ain't Trump. And I'm not even saying Trump would be better. Of course not. But the point is that they are two heads of the same hydra. And to me, one is not morally superior than the other. One just speaks a little bit better than the other. Hey, wait, Colin, do me a favor. Can you pull up like a still of Joe Biden in that video that we saw, like him speaking at the UNGA? I just wanted to point out that Joe Biden got his wig tightened. Did y'all see this? His hair plugs have been repositioned nicely. Sorry. They rearranged his hair plugs. I said, oh, and got some fresh Botox. Woo, look at that. Forehead tight as shit. They repositioned them hair plugs. They said, no, we got to move this one 4 millimeters to the left to have it to be slightly askew, to give the illusion of a part. Look at that. Don't you love to see your taxpayer money at work? Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that lovely? I'm so glad. Thank you so much for the laughing face emojis in the chat. I couldn't be the only one who saw that. I just had to point that out to y'all in case you had not noticed. Mr. Robinette Biden's forehead looking a little tighter there. Yeah, it's very nice. All right. Do us a favor, everybody. Give us a thumbs up on the video. Thank you so much for supporting Status Coup. Please become a member and become a subscriber. You can listen. Well, let me not speak for Jordan. But this is what I say. It's what I tell my viewers is, hey, listen, we appreciate the free support, right? We do. So if you just can subscribe, if you just can give the video a like, if you just can follow Status Coup on social media, we'd appreciate that too, because I understand that times are tight, but I think Jordan wants some money. So if you can sign up to become a subscriber or run the channel some bucks, please do that. It is a very worthwhile investment to be able to bring these kinds of stories to you, and especially the on the ground reporting that Status Coup is very well known for. So we have to move to Puerto Rico, everybody, because Lord have mercy. I was so optimistic and hopeful that we were going to get out of the 2022 hurricane season relatively unscathed. And really, through August, it was looking good, right? It was looking good. We was almost there. And then here we come, the end of September. Wake me up when September ends. So Hurricane Fiona, can we send some love and some solidarity to Guadeloupe? Guadeloupe was also devastated by this storm. Dominican Republic was also badly impacted by the storm. Turks and Caicos caught the brunt of this storm. earlier today. So our Caribbean neighbors are certainly feeling the effects of climate change, like everybody said that they would. It's going to be the non-Western nations that are going to be feeling the effects of climate catastrophes far more harshly than, say, the United States or Western Europe, etc. And they're going to be feeling them first. So as we look at Puerto Rico, I mean, Puerto Rico is not even a neighbor. Puerto Rico is a part of the United States, but it's not a state. It's a commonwealth. It's a colony. And the United States has long treated Puerto Rico very much like a colony, like Puerto Ricans are the subjects of the United States. Now, Puerto Ricans do have some modicum of citizenship. But for example, one of the Supreme Court cases, and I apologize that I cannot bring it quickly to mind, but one of the cases that was decided last term by this court ruled that a Puerto Rican originally from New York who moved to Puerto Rico and who was receiving disability benefits had to repay those benefits back because they moved to Puerto Rico, and Puerto Ricans are not afforded all of the rights and benefits that mainland U.S. citizens are. So it is a further second-class citizenship and subjugation of the Puerto Rican people. And what is the point? It's 2022. How come Puerto Rico can't be involved? And for everyone who is looking at the status of Puerto Rico's infrastructure and saying, hey, if Puerto Rico were just a state, if Puerto Rico was a state, they'd be in better shape. And to that, I hear the residents of Flint, Michigan. I hear the residents of Jackson, Mississippi. To that, I hear the residents of the Southwest who are experiencing drought conditions. They say, what? they say, what? Huh? Being a state and living in a state does not afford you any better benefits or better attention but from the federal government at all. So here's the issue. All of Puerto Rico, as of yesterday, did not have power, and the majority of the island did not have access to potable water. That has changed slightly. Power has been restored to about 27% more of the residents of the island, but we're still looking at well over 1 million Puerto Ricans that are existing right now without any power. By extension, that means no internet. And the water is totally kaput. Okay. And I've been seeing PR people that are there in Puerto Rico who have been imploring everyone else that is interested in trying to help those folks to not make donations to the American Red Cross, to not make donations to FEMA, to not even make any donations to the Puerto Rican government. There are mutual aid groups out there that are on the ground that will make sure that the money, the resources, and the materials get into the hands of the people that really desperately need them. If you tie it up through the Red Cross, if you tie it up through FEMA, we're going to have another scene of that dickhead Donald Trump throwing paper towels into the fucking crowd like he was really doing something. Sir, go the fuck home. No, nobody needed you here to do that. So let's be clear. So let's stay on that. If you want to help, it is imperative that you do some cursory research, do a little bit of digging, and find the places on the ground, the mutual aid organizations that are there directly helping the folks. But let's get started. Let's take a look at what has been transpiring in PR. So I mentioned that the island is still suffering, reeling after this latest Hurricane Fiona. Now, in a very sad twist of irony, Hurricane Fiona struck Puerto Rico the same week, 5 years to the week that Hurricane Maria just tore the island apart, just devastated it. And the difference is Maria was a much stronger storm. Hurricane Fiona was a Category 1. And, the Caribbean, these island nations have been dealing with hurricanes, forever. And, you go to the islands and you talk to the islanders, they will tell you, we might be able to shake off a tropical storm, maybe a Category 1, maybe a Category 2. But when the infrastructure is piss poor, everything falls apart, and it falls apart quickly. And to be perfectly honest, if Fiona had been a stronger storm, we would probably be talking about thousands of people dead. The official death toll for Maria, I believe, was 3,000. And in typical American fashion, I believe that was an undercount. So we're literally talking about people's lives on the line. And as we look at Ukraine, as we look at the American funding available for Ukraine, 25 billion, just like that for Ukraine, and yet hundreds of millions of dollars have been poured into this Puerto Rican power grid, and yet it remains unfixed. And that is not an accident. That is very much intentional. And that is something that the Puerto Ricans themselves are hyper aware of. And back in July, Puerto Ricans took to the streets to demand the end of a privatization contract to operate the Puerto Rican power grid. Okay. Now, we're going to take a look back and well, first, we're going to look at these protests. These protests were from this summer, from July. And I just want us to take a look because, again, people are very aware of their situation. They know what their needs are. They do not need some dickhead from the U.S. federal government coming to them to try to dictate what they can do and what they can't do. These people are hyper aware of the shortcomings of their power grid. In fact, when this latest operator took over, Luma Energy took over, Puerto Ricans said that their service, not only did it start to cost more, not only did Luma raise its rates on the Puerto Rican residents, but the service, in fact, got worse. It got worse. How are we pissing all this money away? And the shit gets worse. Make it make sense. But and these are the questions that Puerto Ricans had back in July when they took to the streets. I want us to credit very quickly the owners of these videos, I suppose. Shout out to Robbie Camacho Rodrigo and the organization Bandera Roja. These are their videos. Again, from July 2022, Puerto Ricans in the streets of San Juan demanding that Luma must go. Let's take a look. July 2022, Puerto Ricans in the street. My Spanish is not so great, but I think they were saying they don't know what they're doing. I think they said they do not know what they are doing. And, they are not wrong. But guess what? Luma is just the latest in a string of privatization efforts of Puerto Rico's power system. Okay. Just like we're about to see happen in Jackson, where they're basically going to say, hey, the public utility has failed. The government is unable to manage this. Let's turn this over to private hands and make sure that this gets done right, because business knows how to get things done. Who the fuck keeps perpetuating that lie? who keeps saying that? Who keeps saying that? And most importantly, who keeps agreeing with it? Because I disagree vehemently. However, the privatization problem did not begin in 2022, but yet it continues. But I wanted us to take a quick look. And my bad, Colin, I meant to ask you to put these two videos together. So maybe if we could play that local news piece from Miami, followed by the CBS News piece. I want us to take a look back at these videos back from 2017. 2017, guys. It's been 5 years since Maria. And the situation, it has to be worse now, because whatever happened after Maria was an abject failure. It was abhorrence. It was a disregard for humanity, for human life. It showed no decency on behalf of the federal government. But lots of people got rich. And I want us to take a look at who got rich off Puerto Rico with the last private energy contractor to service the island's power needs. Let's take a look at these pieces.
And now to the fallout after Hurricane Maria. Today, Puerto Rico's governor demanded that the island's power company cancel a $300 million contract with Whitefish Energy. In response, the head of the power company said the contract will be canceled once current work on the recovery effort ends. Roughly 70% of Puerto Rico remains without power more than a month after Hurricane Maria struck the U.S. territory. The no-bid contract with Whitefish has come under intense scrutiny, and audits of the small Montana company's contract at a local and federal level are underway. The Trump administration denies that political connections had anything to do with restoring power in Puerto Rico.
Nestled down this long driveway in Whitefish, Montana, is a one-story wooden house which is the home of Whitefish Energy. The tiny energy company with only 2 full-time employees surprised many.
There's mail for Andy Tekmensky.
When it received a $300 million no-bid contract to help rebuild Puerto Rico's electrical grid. Whitefish has never worked on a project of this size.
I mean, we're kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's beautiful out here, but certainly doesn't look like a headquarters for an energy company.
Hi, I'm Andy Tekmensky.
Whitefish CEO Andy Tekmensky says his company, which is located in the hometown of Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke, has 300 workers on the ground in Puerto Rico working to fix a crippled electrical system.
And it's going to help get the power back on in Puerto Rico faster.
A month after Hurricane Maria devastated Puerto Rico, 75% of that island is still without power. The controversy over the no-bid contract set off a Twitter feud between the mayor of San Juan, Carmen Yulín Cruz, and the company. Cruz believes the deal with Whitefish Energy should be voided. She described the company as, quote, inadequate and asked for transparency. Whitefish hit back, threatening to leave, writing, quote, we've got 44 linemen rebuilding power lines in your city and 40 more men just arrived. Do you want us to send them back or keep working? The company later apologized.
Whew. Must be nice, right? Could someone just hand you $300 million and say, hey, listen, I saw your hand up, and you know what? I'm not going to call on nobody else. I saw you, Andy, I saw you in the back. I know everybody else had their hand up. I'm calling on Andy. Hey, Andy, guess what? $300 million just for you, baby. Only for you. Do you have the equipment and the manpower necessary to execute this? Inconsequential. Andy, this $300 million got your name on it, Andy. We're going to give it right to you. And that was under Trump. And let's be clear. Colin, let me get that Left Voice piece. Again, Left Voice. Shout out to Left Voice. Shout out to all the leftist outlets that have been on top of this, not only for months, but seriously for years. Let me just read you an excerpt here. So, and this is again from this piece is back from July of this year, reporting on the protest against Luma, right? And it says here, quote, people have seen 7 consecutive increases in their electricity bills, but the power service has not improved since Luma took over back in June of 2021. Residents on the island constantly have to deal with unsteady power and, by extension, the internet, low voltage, and massive blackouts. In April 2022, an island-wide blackout left 1 million people, which is a third of the island's population, without power. Puerto Ricans have denounced these power outages and its effects before. So, this reissuing of the contract, and I'm not exactly clear on the process involved. I don't know if this was a no bid situation or not, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was. But then again, even if it wasn't, let's be clear, the Trump style cronyism that we saw of the last administration, the Bidens do that too. They think they do this shit. They do all the same things. I don't really see much difference between these Bamas, but okay. But when it comes to abortion, sure, we could talk about that. But when it comes to the abject neglect of non-white folks specifically in this country, oh no, Democrats and Republicans stand in unison. They stand united. That is truly a bipartisan effort. And shout out again to the Puerto Ricans for understanding what was going on even before these latest hurricanes and tropical storms made their way through the Caribbean and causing all of this damage. This is a problem, okay? Because what we are seeing truly is the suffering of the Puerto Ricans at the expense of extracting, stealing hundreds of millions of dollars from taxpayers. If I hate to even use that phraseology, from taxpayers. What about people who don't pay taxes? They don't deserve? Of course they deserve. But basically from the US government, right? And $300 million, where did that whitefish money go? Huh? If the grid was not improved and service was not improved, then how come Whitefish is not running us back that $300 million? Which, I mean, of course, that's not how this works, because you're supposed to hook up your friends and your family once you get into political power and political office, right? And if this was Russia or China or Venezuela or Cuba, we would be decrying, hey, this isn't fair. Look at all this corruption. Look at how bad Russia and China do business. What about that Cuba? What about Venezuela? Look at how corrupt they are. All the cronyism. It sounds all too familiar. So Luma has acquired the contract to oversee Puerto Rico's power. And this is under the Biden administration. And as the Puerto Rican residents say, that the service inevitably got worse. So my takeaway from this is that there is no real effort to fix this. Republican and Democratic administrations alike will award these contracts to their friends, to their political allies, and they understand, and so do the companies accepting these contracts, that nothing is really expected of them. What's expected is that the government will pay the bill, right? Making sure that the quality of service and the infrastructure is up to snuff, that is not necessarily a demand that the US government makes in return, right? The government is happy to hand over this money and get nothing in return. And this is intentional genocide. I don't even know how many people have passed away in this latest storm of Puerto Rico, and I hope it is a very small number. I hope no one died. But the bottom line is that chances are these deaths could have been prevented, especially the 3,000 deaths from Maria. If the power system had been in place, if the infrastructure had been adequate, it would have saved lives. And America's failure to continually address this, letting years and years, letting a half a decade go in between these major natural catastrophes without making any improvements, that tells me you don't care if Puerto Ricans live or die. Same thing with Jackson, Mississippi. This has been a decades-long problem in Jackson. This has been a generations-long problem. This is not new. This didn't just happen when Tate Reeves got elected governor. This didn't happen when Donald Trump got elected president. The issues in Jackson have been pervasive, and they have been pervasive under both Democratic and Republican administrations. And again, the fatal apathy, the intentional neglect of these folks is how America enacts its domestic policies, and how they are laden with racism. Like this is not an accident. What's happening in New York at the Joseph Reeves houses, or what happened in Flint, or what's happening in Jackson, or what is happening on the Navajo Nation, or what is happening in Puerto Rico. You notice what do all these places have in common? What do all these places and all the people that live there have in common? And that is perfectly obvious to Democrats. They know it. They know it. They could fix it. And I guess I will shout out China. Let me shout out to fucking China real quick, because guess what? If this was China, China would have that shit together in a month. I'm telling you, this capitalism is a murder cycle. It is a death machine. It is not interested in preserving life. It's interested in making money. And those things are incongruent. Those things do not go together. Okay. I don't subscribe to a capitalist system. I don't believe in it. I actually think it's a death machine. And all the evidence shows me exactly that. And for those who want to point the fingers at other countries, well, what about communism? What about socialism? Look at how their people live. Nigga, look at how the fuck we live. Excuse me for using the N-word. I'm not at home. I keep forgetting. I'm not at my house today. Hold on to me tighten up on my racial slurs. But you feel what I'm saying? We have food lines here. We have people who cannot drink the water here. We have political cronies sucking up hundreds of millions, billions of dollars of government contracts and giving nothing in return right here. So what are we going to do to adjust this system? I don't think it can be adjusted. That's why the name of my channel is called Burn It Down with Kim Brown. Burn it down. Burn it down and build it back better. But not like that little funky ass piece of legislation passed by the Biden administration. We got to come up with a new acronym for BBB because that build back better is not going to be the one. But you understand what I'm saying, right? So, I mean, it's imperative, y'all. What kind of system do we want? Do we want to continue to operate in a system that is drastically unequal, where only those who can afford it, those who can afford to live in a place where your water is adequate? I mean, is that the America that we want? Because it's the America that we have, and it's truly the America that we've always had. But what I'm partially here to do is sort of dispel any sort of mythology around the exceptionalism of this country. Like I don't see it for America. Everybody keeps telling me America's exceptional. America's the best. At what? at what? Tell me at what? At the racism's awesome. Yes, top notch. Who is fucking with us? Nobody. At exporting war and weaponry, of course, yes, we're number one. We're number one. But promoting democracy, for equality, for the best public education system in the world, absolutely not. Best public health system in the world, not even close. Nowhere near. So anyway, let me bid you adieu. Because there are other water stories, and I'm pretty sure Jordan is going to bring them to you this week. There was a story coming out of the University of North Carolina where they have detected lead in some of the water fountains there on campus, doing a very bad job of alerting people, by the way. University of North Carolina, shame on you. And there were some other water stories coming out of Chicago. And again, I just want you guys to pay attention. Please pay close attention at where these water stories are happening, where these infrastructure failings are happening. And again, I'm not to say that in majority poor white areas, they are not seeing the same thing, but like this though, like 1 million people on Puerto Rico, like tens of thousands in Jackson. I mean, they might be seeing it hither and thither. I do not know if they're seeing it at this level, but even if they are, white people, be alarmed, be very concerned, because if they'll do this to Black people, if they'll do this to Puerto Ricans, the only thing that's preventing them doing it to you is time, right? It's only a matter of time. Any sort of mass intentional harm targeted towards a specific group, they are just waiting to see if the majority is going to tolerate it, right? Because they always test it out on Negroes, whatever the grand scheme thing is going to be, right? They test it out on the Blacks first and the non-whites first to see what the whites is going to do. And the whites just look and go, "Ooh, that's a shame. Ooh, that's too bad. Gosh, I feel so sorry for them people." And they're like, "Yep, y'all next." So white folks, tighten up, because as long as they're doing it to Blacks and Puerto Ricans, truly, it is only a matter of time before this same sort of abject apathy and neglect and allowing of things to collapse into truly a society that does not value life. It doesn't value human life. It doesn't value any sort of life. So there is more of us than them, and I suggest we take some action. But anywho, that's the show. Thank you all so much for tuning in. For those who decided to stick around, we so appreciate it. Shout out to the folks who ran us some super chats. I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Observer. You're the only one that I saw, but anyone else that may have ran the channel some chats, we certainly appreciate the support here at Status Coup. Please don't forget to give the video a thumbs up on your way out the door. Subscribe, become a member, and don't forget, subscribe to my channel too. It's called Burn It Down with Kim Brown. I cuss a lot. I cuss way more on my show than I cuss on here. And that's, I mean, I don't just do cussing, you know, we do commentary and reporting and all that good stuff too, but it is a fair amount of cussing. So come on over to Burn It Down with Kim Brown. My show airs Tuesdays and Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern. And you can also catch me on Black Power Media for the Remix Morning Show, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays. It is always a good time. If you've always been curious, perhaps, about the Black radical perspective, Black Power Media is an excellent place to start. So come on over, check us out tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., Black Power Media for the Remix Morning Show. And I'll see you guys Friday. Well, Jordan will see y'all back here tomorrow. But I hopefully will see at least a few of y'all Friday, 7 p.m. for Burn It Down with Kim Brown. Thank you all so much for having me. See y'all later. Bye-bye.